Hey there, mamas. If we haven't met, my name is Kendra, and I am a mom to 3 lovely girls, ages 7, 5, and 2. I've been married for 9 years to my wonderful husband, Jeremy, and I have the honor of working here at Substance Church in the kids ministry, and I just love kids. I love your kids. I love my kids more than yours, but I do love your kids, and I love your families. I am so passionate about coming alongside families in their journey with Christ, and I love learning about being a parent, and the longer that I'm a parent, the more that I dive into all the science and the journals. What I've realized is that so much of the work of parenting is actually an inner work. It's more about us as parents than it is about your kids. And for some of you, that's not good news. Some of you thought I came here to hear about how to make my kids listen to me. I just need them to brush their teeth or to stop hitting their brother. And there are strategies for those things, and those are all very important. But what I want to share with you today is that the work that you do on yourself, that inner work, is actually going to have a great impact on the foundation of your family. And it's a greater impact than any other strategy for your kids' behavior. It's a legacy that you're going to pass on to your kids. This year, we're talking about foundations. It's those things that come first, the stuff that you build everything else on. And we know that Christ is our firm foundation. That is where everything starts. But Amanda gave a great talk on that a couple weeks ago, so I'm not going to repeat everything she said. I'd like to just lay a brick on top of that. Our theme verse for this year is Isaiah 58. And it states, "Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called the repairer of broken walls, the restorer of streets with dwellings." I want to pull out a couple words. Ancient ruins, broken walls. Maybe you were passed a heaping pile of rubble as your parenting legacy. Let's just put ourselves in the sandals of the Israelites that were coming from Babylon. These were captives. They were living in the powerhouse empire of the day. And when given the chance at going for freedom, they were like, yes, I'm going to take it. I'm going to step out into freedom. Does that sound like you? Are you one of the first of your family to step out into freedom? And then when the Israelites got to their homeland, it wasn't quite as glorious as they thought it was going to be. Some of them had to have been thinking, why did we even leave Babylon? I mean, they have hanging gardens. And what do we have? Dust and rubble. And a lot of hard work. My grandma left home at 15 years old, the second that she could, to escape an abusive alcoholic father. She started with dust and rubble. She made this brave choice to leave what she knew and to build a foundation in Christ. And oftentimes, we will stay in something that is known and that is comfortable because the unknown is scary and we don't know what to expect. Even if what's expected is not healthy or scary, we'll stay there. So to step out into that freedom is so brave. Now, my mom took over what my grandma had started, and she took our family to new levels of health and freedom. And now it's my turn to continue. See, the thing is there are always greater levels of freedom and health. We all have dysfunction in our own lives, and even with the work that was handed down to me, the legacy that was passed to me, an adult trauma in my life gave me heaps of rubble to sort through. You see, life is full of things that will cause damage to the work that we're doing. Have you ever had to pick up the pieces of your life and start over amid all of the rubble? So whether you have childhood wounds or you have adult wounds or you have both, if you have what feels like a heaping pile of stones standing in front of you, I want you to know that there is nothing that God cannot restore. There is nothing too broken. There is nothing too dead that he cannot bring back to life. You see, Jesus wasn't just a little dead, and then they hit him with 10 cc's of epi and a defibrillator, right? He was dead. He was 3 days dead, and God brought him back to life. And if he can do that, there is hope for you standing here with the stones laying at your feet. Ancient ruins and broken walls may have been what you were passed to work with, but you will be called a repairer of broken walls and a restorer of streets with dwelling. If that is you, what a beautiful legacy you are going to pass to your children, and how blessed they will be to receive that from you. And if you are someone who received a built-up legacy, you have the privilege of building on it. And what a beautiful legacy you're going to pass to your children, and how blessed they will be with the work that you are doing. So wherever you are, there is work to be done. And the good news is, it's not even your job to finish, right? You just have to keep on building. Like David, who wanted to build the temple for the Lord. It actually wasn't his job to do all of the building, but he gathered the materials and he laid out the plans and he assembled the workers, and then he passed it on to his son Solomon, who continued the work. So hopefully at this point, you're getting excited and you're like, yes, I'm here, sign me up, give me a brick and some mortar, I'm gonna start laying some stones, just call me a mason. But what does that look like? What does this inner work look like? Because this is one of the ways that we're laying the foundation. And today I'm just going to focus on one thing that you can do, and that is creating an understanding of your own story. Psychologists call this a cohesive narrative. When it comes to healthy relationships for your life, for your kids, what happened to you is not nearly as important as making sense of what has happened to you. Dr. Dan Siegel, and if you've heard me speak ever, you've heard his name come up. He, in some of his books, touches on this topic. He says that the single best predictor of positive outcomes for a child to be emotionally healthy and primed to thrive is not what has happened to his parents, but rather how his parents have made sense of those experiences. And this is great news, because in this world you will have trouble, right? We have all faced hardship, but hardship does not disqualify you. God knew what he was doing when he created us, when he designed us, when he made how our brains function. This is good news. The way that we feel about our past, understanding why people behaved the way that they did, and the impact of those events on our development into adulthood, those all become part of an internal story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. And how you have processed this story can limit you in the present, and it can pass down a painful legacy to your children. Pastor Peter always says that pain that is not transformed is transmitted. But a cohesive narrative is one of the ways that we can transform that pain and we can change the legacy. One of the reasons that we remember is to help us predict the future. Memories help us to respond to current situations. And it's important to note that this is not always conscious. It happens very quickly and at a subconscious level. But when we are unearthing those experiences, those unhealthy experiences, and we're processing them in healthy ways, they don't get stuck. But if you don't process them in healthy ways, you get stuck responding to situations through that filter. Let me give you an example. Say you scrape your knee and it hurts and you're a kid and you go to your primary attachment figure, likely your mom or your dad, and you're crying and it hurts, and they say, "You're fine, brush it off, stop crying." And this happens time and time again. What happens is you internalize that your signals of pain are not met with empathy or comfort. So you learn to keep those signals inside because they actually create disattachment from your attachment figure. Now, fast forward into painful situations in your adulthood, perhaps an emotionally painful situation. Instead of turning to a friend, what you do is you stuff it inside, or you turn to other methods of soothing because past experiences have taught you that your signals of pain are not going to be met with comfort, but dismissed. Some people may be able to soothe their pain through healthy methods. I don't know them. But often our coping strategies are more harmful than they are helpful. And they are an inferior substitute for connection, which is what God intends for our life. So if you can make sense of those memories, for example, when I would fall and get hurt and scrape my knee and I'd go to my mom and I'd be crying and she says, "Brush it off, you're fine, stop crying." I realized that she had been told if she offered me comfort, she was coddling me, and I wouldn't be able to manage the hard world. It was her attempt at preparing me for life. I recognize now that my reaction to pain is to curl inward instead of to reach out. The way that we can make sense of our experiences is by taking the feelings and sensations, the way that we lived those experiences through the right side of our brains, and process them using the logic and language of the left side of our brains. We can put words to those sensations and feelings, and through that, we can create understanding of the what and the why. Now, this is very difficult to do if your memories have been fragmented by overwhelming anxiety or terror or other forms of trauma. It's really difficult to have an accurate or a sequential memory of traumatizing experiences. But it is still possible by piecing together the facts as you know them. I would encourage you to seek out the help of a therapist, however, because if you revisit trauma without the right circumstances, it can actually make things worse. I also want to make the caveat that this is not the same thing as venting or word vomit. Oh, my mom was such a jerk. Every time I got hurt, she just brushed it off. It's like she didn't even care about me, right? This is not about perpetuating a victim narrative or just blowing off steam. This is not an explosion of feelings, which feels great in the moment, but actually perpetuates the problem. This is tapping into feelings and sensations, giving them facts and sequence, creating understanding of what our role was, the role of others in our lives, and most importantly, the role of Christ in our life. In Revelations 12:11, it says, "And they have defeated him," the devil, "by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony." Ultimately, our victory comes from the sacrifice of Jesus, and there is power in the telling of our testimony. As adults, if you have an attuned relationship with someone, they can give space to help you reflect on our lives and make sense of our history. This relationship can be so helpful, and that is why we say community is so very important. And if you don't have that while you're working on it, and I encourage you to work on it, start by writing out your memories. Go back to the feelings and the sensations from your childhood or your adult experiences and write them down in a cohesive way. You can bring the understanding of your adult brain to what your role was, what the role of other people were, and where Christ is in your story. This organization and putting to words this testimony is a way for your brain to process and organize what happened to you, how these events shape how you experience and react to life today. And I encourage you to find, where is the victory of Christ in your story? Even if right now it's just a faith proclamation, he is there. So whether you are like Solomon and have been gifted plans and building materials from your family and that's your legacy, or you're like the Israelites coming out of captivity and you're starting with rubble, with God's help, you can build up your family by examining yourself, your experiences, and you can create a cohesive narrative of your life so you can set up your kids to go even further than you. I want to pray for you. Father, I thank you so much for these moms, for these families. God, you care so deeply about parenthood and about families. God, I thank you that you have given us the tools that we need to see our families into greater levels of health. God, you have designed us in a way that when we come into trouble in this world, that you are there with us, you are our peace, and you have given us what we need to move forward. I thank you, God, for each and every one of these moms and their families.